but it comes out slowly.
Hello?
Hi, I can hear you now. Is your connection having trouble?
I don't know why. Maybe I'll need to get something else. Another connection. I has been working fine. But let's talk about the stuff we've earlier scheduled for today, and then maybe at the end we can do a debrief and talk about other things.
Okay, I'm recording, so I will listen to this again and then kind of hit stop and start times for the different areas where we talk about something significant. And then my husband's out of town until Thursday. When he gets back, I'll have him take a look at the video and help me put them into chunks so we can upload them over the next 3 weeks or 2-3 weeks, depending on how much content we get. So.
Yeah, I think something else we can do to maybe give it some more, to give each of the chunks some more context. It will be maybe, I don't know how feasible that will be, but to give like a brief intro. So when we identify the different segments, it can now be maybe a short video to say, okay, this is like an introduction to, since the conversation might just be kind of disjointed, so maybe like short video to say, okay, this is a conversation about this.
The easiest thing to do would be for us to do it in here before we start the discussion. That's the quick and dirty way to do it. Otherwise, I can record after the fact a brief introduction that would lead into it. But I'm not sure, because they would be two separate videos, how they would coincide together as one. So it's much easier to go from one stream. And what we would do is when we record the introduction, we would give ourselves like a 1 minute kind of intro, and then after a few seconds, just kind of after we finish it, we would pause for about 5 to 10 seconds, and then it would lead into the discussion.
Okay.
That would just be the easiest way to make sure it happens that way. So we can cut and splice the video from the same basic video. As I can record brief intros, but I think they would go up separately, introducing the talk, and then the talk would be there. But if we want them combined, yeah, it's just, I'm taking the long way to explain something I already explained. So let me stop. Okay. So I think the first thing we wanted to talk about today was the Michael Neill video. Michael Neill, for people who don't know, is one of the thought leaders in the Three Principles community. He has written some books. He's a coach. He does a lot of work on the Three Principles. This Michael Neill video specifically leads back to a quote by Syd Banks, who is the founder of the Three Principles. It says, everyone is doing the best they can given the thinking that they have that looks real to them. Michael Neill talks about premises and how some things that may look nutty to us make perfect sense to the person doing them. So in a few seconds, George and I will talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I watched the Michael Neill video, I was really struck by, I'm always struck by his presence. He's just got this very calm, easygoing kind of demeanor, and he's really just kind of happy to be expressing himself. And when he was talking about, as a coach, being concerned with people's premises, I thought, well, what is a premise? And for me, it was sort of like, it was very similar to what we think of as perspective, like a way somebody looks at the world or looks at things. And I'm not sure if it had the same meaning for you. So maybe, I think for him, that's how he was referring to it as. But I'm wondering what you got, because you watched it too. And, two people can have
Yes.
the same thing and have a completely different experience.
Yes. That was the phase for me was, you know, is looking out for is, I'm sure you'll be in a client conversation and you hear unbelievable, like how someone could
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. Let's see. Maybe we should go back out and come back in again. Hey, thank you for coming back in. I think what we should do is try to restart from the beginning. I got the intro already, and we have the little time in between, so we can kind of go from there. So in about 3 seconds, I'll let you start this time, and then I'll kind of relate back. So if you want to bring up the concept of premise or even reiterate the Syd Banks quote, that would be good. Okay?
Okay, so the quotes. In fact, when I watched the Michael Neill video, I had a profound insight, and it was around how how I look at the conversation, or I take when having a conversation with the client, in terms of what I'm looking to find, what I should be curious about. Yes, obviously I want to get what's going on and get the details and all that. But when you talked about premise, it just made sense, because even though sometimes what you hear from other people might not really make sense, like you wonder how can someone think like that.
Yeah.
But it made me realize that it makes sense to that person. Like, it really, as far as that person is concerned, it's whatever they're saying is 100% true.
Right.
And yes, and until you get the premise, until you get what's before what they're saying, then it will just be like butting your head against a wall, because you're coming from a different understanding or a different perspective or with a different premise. And until you look beyond your premise to see what the person is seeing, that is making them conceptualize what it is they're saying, or making them feel whatever they're trying to fix is a problem, then
Yeah.
it will be difficult to help. So it was a real shift for me to see that my job was really to get their world, to really understand what must the world look like to this person.
Yeah. It's very different than the concept of meeting someone where they're at. It's actually inhabiting the place they're in,
Yes.
like stepping into their world, using their worldview. And so for me, it was like, oh, coaching can be so much more. It can be richer, and it takes away my premise, or my perspective is irrelevant to the client conversation. So our goal now as coaches is to try to ask questions to understand the client's perspective or premise, so that we can get a better understanding of why there are maybe blocks for them, or why they're rationalizing things the way they are, or how they have fitted into their moral code. Because I think Michael Neill was saying that people act the way they do because of the way they believe. So, and I could be wrong, but to me it just made sense.
Yeah.
People have a certain set of core beliefs or values or a system that they set up, and it's different for everyone. And that's why two people could, like you and I both saw the same video, but we have different experiences of it, or certain things resonated for me that may not have resonated for you, and vice versa, because we have different premises or perspectives on the world.
Yeah. And I think the second part of that is realizing that, based on the Syd Banks quote, that at the level of thinking that they're at, whatever they're doing makes sense. So
Right.
it's not a question of you're wrong or you're right. It's like looking out of a window when you're on the floor of a building.
Yeah.
Whatever you see, yeah, but it's only what's there from like what you see. Let's say you take a picture, right? It's what you're seeing at that level of viewing, so to say. Now, what you will see from the first floor will be different from what you saw on the ground floor, but it's still the same place, right? So you could be on the first floor arguing with the person on the ground floor and saying, no, 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 there's no this, it's a blue roof and it's this, and the person is saying, no, 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 it's a very big window, and you're both right. It's just that until you can, look beyond where your starting point is and realize that, okay, I'm actually on the first floor. That's why what I'm saying is different. I need to try to imagine what it would be like if I was on, the other floor, and then begin to see what you're seeing. Then it will be easier for me to lead the person to what I'm seeing, or whatever, or at least to realize that there's something different. So
Right.
it reminds me of um, uh, one of the 7 habits of highly effective people by Stephen Covey. He said,
Mhm.
seek first to understand and then to be understood. I think it's more or less being, first of all, trying to understand the premise and get into the world of whoever it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a client. It could be a spouse,
Mhm.
a colleague, a child, or a stranger on the streets, or just anybody. But it's a very powerful place to come from, because it's like playing Scrabble with someone, and you somehow have the ability to see the tiles
Right.
they have in front of them, as well as yours. So it gives you an edge to kind of take decisions from there.
Yeah.
So it's like holding an ace up your sleeve. Like I can see from your own perspective and mine, and
Right.
then yeah, it's
But
really
it's even
profound.
interesting in that analogy. Would you use the words, would you put the tiles in the same order that that person would? So it's even taking it further and trying to think, because you might create different words than they would. Do you know what I mean? With the
True.
tiles.
Yeah.
So it's also not only having the information of their tiles, it's understanding how their mind works and would put those tiles together to create
Absolutely.
words. And I think
Absolutely.
Michael Neill talked about his marriage and how sometimes they interact with each other in ways that seem crazy to other people but make sense to them. You know, it was just like, it reminded me a little bit of my own marriage and how this concept does work very well for, like you said, interpersonal interactions as well as interactions with clients. You know, because we are all different.
Yeah, and even yeah, yeah. I was just going to say that even beyond that, intrapersonal. So even for me, there are things that I look back on and wonder, like, what was I thinking? Like, you could look back to some of the things you did, or some of the things you said, or in the past, and just wonder how could you be so dumb, you know? But at the time, you were doing your best. Like
Yeah.
you didn't just set up to be to be stupid or to do something and make a fool of yourself. No, giving the thinking you had that made sense at the moment. And then maybe with more information or with better insight and more maturity, when you look back, you are like, you know, I can't believe I said that, you know. But
Yeah.
it's just true on so many levels, whether it's with ourselves, interpersonal relationships. It's a universal truth that I think is um, it's really valuable to understand and practice.
Yeah. And although Michael didn't touch upon that interpersonal relationship, when you said it, I was like, yeah, you know, because you know, 10 or 18 or 22, you know, my thinking or my the premises were different. You know, me at 45, and I don't care that you all know my age, me at 45 doesn't think the same way. I don't operate on the same premises. If I were in that situation now, my choices would probably be different or my reactions would be different. And it's trying to, when you go back there, understanding and giving yourself grace, because so many of us look back at our life and say, oh, I did that stupid thing, or oh, I regret this. And if we could start meeting our own selves where we were at that time, then we wouldn't be spending so much time wallowing in the past in not hating ourselves. I don't want to use that term, but disapproving of what we've done. You know, regretting it, holding on to incidents that don't apply to us now. You know, so it has a lot of good interpersonal kind of ramifications when you even bring it to that level as well. And from a coaching perspective, it changes the paradigm in a way, because you're not just meeting people where they're at, you're meeting them with who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so your agenda, which we're not supposed to have an agenda, obviously, but your perspective doesn't even matter when you're talking to your client. So we can't color their choices, their words with things we would do. We have to really try to inhabit their experience and really put ourselves in their premises and try to understand how they think, how they operate, and you know, help them understand why things happen the way they did so that they can move forward and create a present and a future that's more reasonable and more tenable for them. Because we work with change, you know, usually, where people come to us because they want something to change normally. Or I don't know about you, but that's what they do with me. And
Yeah.
so it's all about understanding the premise where they're at now and seeing how we can shift it slightly so that they can start behaving in a different way. We first have to fully understand their current premise before we can even get them to a point of change. So for me, Michael Neill was was dead on, that we have to really deal with premises, not so much as, you know, the things they're telling us. It's what's underneath, what's the underlying thought process, what's their own personal agenda for what they do. How do they structure life? You know, how do they think about it? What are their moral code? What's right? What's wrong? How do they justify certain behaviors that to us may seem, to use this term, nutty? You know, I don't have any clients that I think do anything nutty, but there's some people that, you know, do stuff that you're just like, whoa. I wouldn't do that, but it's trying to understand where they're coming from and why they did that, so that you can understand why, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also speaks to when you see that everyone is actually doing the best they can, then it opens up space for a lot of empathy. So you know that no matter how crazy this person's behavior, or no matter how annoying or stubborn you think they are, they're really just doing their best based on the level of thinking that they have at that moment. And
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people do stuff one moment, and the next hour they're so remorseful and they're regretting everything they did. But at the time when that action was taking place, it made sense. So it's seeing that you begin to feel for people, not in a way of it's wrong for you or it's right for me, but it's like, okay, I get that this makes sense. It has to make sense on some level, because think about it, like if if I know that stabbing myself in the arm with a knife is like it hurts me, then it doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Right.
Yeah, but if it looks to me like stabbing myself in the arm with a knife will, I don't know, maybe get me sympathy from people, or something that I think is useful, then at some level it might make sense to try, even if I'll feel pain, right?
So
So
yeah, like the payoff is bigger, the reward is bigger than the
when you analyze action, whatever um, way the person is showing up, it makes sense at some level, even if it doesn't seem rational, but
yeah,
obviously it's rational to that person. And
yeah.
it's in seeing that and coming from a, a space of curiosity, like what what really could have been going on for this person to be thinking this way or to have taken this action. And
Oh, sorry. Am I here? We had a power outage. I apologize. We had a power outage. Are you there? Hello? I'm going to stop the recording.